Welcome to Rick on Life, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. I'm Rick Amitin, and this is where we like to talk about things that affect our daily lives. Today, we're going to be talking with author Annie Johnson, who has written a book called Powerful Women, Where Does Your Power Come From? Annie published her first book in 2005, and since then, she's published 6 more books. She also has several works in progress, including turning one of her books into a made-for-TV movie. Annie, you know you're my gal. It's really good to see you.
Good to see you too, Rick. Thanks for having me.
I know you haven't been feeling well, so I hope you're feeling much better today.
I'm getting there.
Listen, I know you were born in Florida, and you were raised in Chicago, and you currently live in Lansing, Illinois. How have you managed to keep from turning into an ice cube back there?
Oh my God, it's not easy. It's not easy. Easy.
Well, you know, I was born in Gary, Indiana, and I was raised in Cedar Lake, which was, it's about 40 miles south of Chicago. And I like to inform everybody that I was born in the same town that Michael Jackson was born in. And we were born in different hospitals. And that's the only reason I can think of, you know, for our differences. For instance, he could sing, and I'm not much of a singer. And he found it interesting to walk backwards and wear one glove, and I've always preferred 2 gloves and watching where I'm going.
Right.
But I'm very familiar with the cold weather. I grew up in that Great Lakes, that Chi-Town wind. So I sympathize with you up there right now.
It's no fun.
Yeah. Listen, Annie, when did you first know that you wanted to be a writer?
I first knew that I wanted to be a writer at an early age because I knew that I loved to read anything I can get my hands on. It didn't make a difference what it was. In fact, I used to read bags upon bags of books, and I knew it was something a little bit different. Everyone likes to read, but I knew it was something a little bit different. And then I was laid off from a major company in 2005. And I asked God what it is that He wanted me to do in my next career. I knew there were a few things I wanted to do, and He said, write.
Yeah.
Very quickly, not elaborating on it, but just write. And I was like, huh? But anyway, it was at that point when I knew something was going on and that I needed to do something in the writing field.
Where do you find your inspiration? I mean, you've written several books now, and you know, when you start thinking about writing, creating a storyline, a message, you start thinking of titles and things like that. Where do you draw on that source of inspiration?
It usually starts with something in my past or something that just someone else will say that strikes me interesting and holds my interest. And it usually starts with an outline that can change during the writing process at any time. But it usually starts with a basic outline and it grows from there.
Do you know, many writers talk about seeing the end from the beginning. So they've got that picture and then they start writing to it. I've also talked to writers who feel like they just have this idea that they want to release and see where it goes, don't really have the full ending in sight. I think when I write, I have some end in mind. But more importantly than the end, I'm wanting to communicate something. And so I just need a starting point and an ending point. And then I want to be sure that I've actually communicated the point that I'm really trying to make. So when you are writing, do things change for you? Does it like go off of the original script? Do you expand it? Do you stick to it? What's your discipline when it comes to that?
Absolutely. It's always changes throughout the writing process. But when I said that, when I spoke on the outline, I should have emphasized and said that it starts with an outline. 99 times out of 100, when I'm writing the book, it changes. A lot changes in between. Like you say, there's the start and there's the ending. In the middle could go any kind of which way, twists and turns that I didn't start out with originally.
Well, along with your inspiration, when you're writing, do you have an audience in mind? Do you have a particular group of people that you're thinking about when you're writing your books?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Who would that be?
That includes the nonfiction and the fiction. The nonfiction mostly is geared towards the youth that's coming up, that can some things that can help them throughout their life that they're going to deal with, have already dealt with, or are going to run into eventually. The fiction is usually of interest to the females. I would say between the ages of 25 and 60.
Yeah, so it sounds like in part there is a desire that you have to want to reach back, mentor in some capacity, to share your experiences and what you've learned. And so are you incorporating that into your writing, to say, hey, this is what happened, this is what I learned, this is what I want to share with you, these are the directions that I would encourage you to go, or here's some warning signs? Is that sort of in your mind when you're writing?
Oh, for sure, definitely. There's always a message in my books, whether it be fiction or nonfiction.
So you're communicating. You're communicating from a not just your imagination. You're communicating from your heart. Your life experiences. Yeah, I get that. Have you thought in the future? Do you feel that you're going to stay with the audience that you are currently reaching for, or do you think that you're going to try and expand into maybe a different audience?
That's quite possible because I'm always coming up with new ideas and new concepts and new ways of getting messages out, new ways of encouraging and motivating.
Yeah.
Like
Now you write from a Christian perspective. Do you incorporate that into all of your writing?
Yes, sir. Even fiction. There's always a message. Even if it's kind of what we call racy, there is always a message within the book. Yeah.
Does that message change, or does it remain a central theme that you just kind of work from that core, and it's like it's the root, and then you build, each story could have a tree that looks a little different, or a fruit that looks a little different, or a landscape that looks a little different? Does your books change from does the message of your books change from book to book, or do you find that you're staying pretty much with a core message that you just expand on each time?
It can change. It changes from book to book because I want something for everyone.
What's your favorite book so far that you've written?
I can only pick one. I can pick two. if I would have to pick powerful woman, where does your power come from? As far as fiction, as far as nonfiction, for fiction, I would pick the Torn series, which Torn 2 is coming out this week.
Yeah, great. Um, I want to tell you, Andy, religion seems to be doing okay in our country, but Christianity seems to be under a pretty significant attack. And sometimes I feel like it's one step away from needing life support. And many arguments are made against any patriarchal or perceived patriarchal system. And many see Christianity as a male-dominated authority structure. Some branches undoubtedly are guilty of that. I don't think that's the way that God intended it. And so I have my own views on how that is, in how we should be interpreting that. But you wrote to women in your book, Powerful Women, Where Does Your Power Come From? How does an empowered woman see herself alongside men in our current world, and what are you encouraging here?
Alongside our men, for sure, there is a chapter in Powerful Woman dedicated specifically for men. Powerful Woman is not in any way, shape, form, or fashion uh, male bashing by any chance. We love men. We encourage men, and we want our men to be successful. And we know that men are under a lot of pressure these days, and so we want to encourage them, embrace them, motivate men. There's no male bashing in Powerful Woman.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I'm sure all men would be happy to know you didn't beat up on them. But how does how do you see it as relating to, in society right now? I mean, there's such extreme movements, and both on the conservative and the so-called liberal side. Um, and when I look at it, study it, talk to people, try to understand, what's going on, there is certainly an element in feminism that to me disempowers women, because it does go into the hate of men, and it paints men as being disposable, unnecessary, and the guilty party to holding them back to all of their dreams. I also find that a lot of women have their own view, and it doesn't necessarily meet with the message of the extreme side of the argument. The feminine movement, in a large extent, has left the battle for equality and women's rights, and has become intolerant. It's become very biased, and there are conservative groups that that are just as guilty on the other side, but those are the extremes, and I don't think they represent the main nucleus of our country, who seems to have a more sensible approach. But we have to deal with all this rhetoric, and we have to deal with all this political pressure, and we have to navigate. And so when you talk about empowering women, and I took a look at your book, and I looked at the chapters, and I looked at the things that you are writing about, but we are not alone. And what I mean by that is, women don't stand alone. Men don't stand alone. We're here. We have our roles. We have our personalities. We have our functionality. We have, our interaction with one another. We want it to be good and healthy. And you know enough about me, and I know enough about you. that, you know, I would fight for you not being discriminated against on any level. I don't want you held back. I don't want. I have daughters. You know, I have a wife. I'm very supportive. You know, I also have a grandson, and so. Equality is something that just came natural to me. I mean, it's like people have to work so hard at understanding that. I don't get that conflict except for the fact that I know that it comes from baggage. It comes from issues. It comes from perception. But when you're writing about a powerful woman, where does your power come from? You relate it coming from God. You know, you're explaining that message, but what's the larger purpose of the message? What are you encouraging, and what is it that you want to see happen among women?
I just wanted to reiterate and let people that don't know the obstacles that women run into, the multiple things that we have to do and deal with on a daily basis. And it was just meant to encourage and empower women that go through this to carry on and keep being you and keep being strong and keep moving forward. That was the whole thing. It wasn't uh, any type of feminist movement or anything like that. It's really just to empower women and encourage them to keep on keeping on.
What do you think, like in your own experience, then what do you think that has been the biggest obstacles to your dreams, or the things that you want to achieve?
I would probably say up until recently, confidence, to go after what I really want. A lot of times when you're a natural encourager and a natural giver, you wind up helping other people do what they want to do before you boost your own self up and go after your own dreams. Being a natural encourager and giver, you kind of neglect yourself more.
Yeah. So then, in powerful women, where does your power come from? Um, so you address that in the book, that women need to find their confidence. They need to find their. They need to give themselves permission um, to dream big, to go after go after those dreams. Um, and so, if your biggest challenge was finding your own confidence, do you think that's common with women? Or because I've been in the business community, and I've been with women who were much more confident than I was, you know, at different stages, at different times of my life. And so your audience then may not be to the woman who already is, you know, got her wings spreading and flying. You're wanting to address that. You're wanting to address that woman who may be struggling with confidence, who may not be believing in herself, that may think that she doesn't have the right to dream big, or
Right.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm asking you.
Right. That's true. It might not. It might look like on the outside that she's confident because she's always uh, uplifting other people, and she might be get neglected or neglect her own needs, helping other people. So it's kind of a thin line. It's a thin line uh, between helping others and helping yourself. Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of caregivers, you know, I'm certainly, you know, somebody that you know, I govern my own life by disciplining myself to care about others, to be interested in other people, to try to, you know, incorporate that into just my thoughts, my daily thinking and my actions. And I try to write positively. I try to say encouraging things. I try to point people in that direction. But there is something beyond positivity, because there is a disconnect between what you can. I think it's certainly better to play the positive affirmations in your mind, even though if you're not connecting them with your heart. But it is possible to say the right things, but somewhere between the head and the heart, the belief is not connecting, and so you're not really seeing what you want to see in your life, because you're not really believing in what you're saying. Do you agree with that?
Somewhat. That's where the Christian part comes in. You have to believe in things that you do not see. Your faith has to be strong enough to believe that you can achieve your desire.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit then. On a personal note, how does your faith inform your dreams, your self-image, your destiny? How does your faith inform you in those areas?
I come from a long line of women of faith, and it was taught. And then when I was old enough to know for my own, to find out for my own self, I started believing and using biblical principles to encourage myself.
Yeah. So when you're feeling challenged, or you're feeling like you've got this something hindering you, and it's like, man, I feel this life, I feel this energy, and I'm wanting to. I've got this this image in my mind of what I'm supposed to get out there, and yet it's not flowing. It's not releasing somehow. It's like getting stuck somewhere in the process. Do you have any routines or any habits or disciplines that you rely on that you can use to move yourself out of any negativity that you're feeling?
Absolutely. I try to stay away from as much negativity as possible, and that alone is difficult to do these days. But prayer, I would suggest prayer, affirmations, writing down the affirmations, and repeating them, repeating positive affirmations, and practicing positivity. When we're naturally drawn to negativity, practice positivity. It's like practicing anything. You have to practice it. It's not going to come naturally. It has to be repeated.
Yeah. So we kind of work on things until they become habit, and I'm always sharing with people. I think it's a big waste of energy to try to turn wood into metal, or to try to take a negative and turn it into positive. You just take the positive and build on that from where you are. And I think a lot of times people are trying to overturn something, to make something different than what it is, instead of accepting that difference and building on that. And I think there is a great power in getting in the moment and recognizing it for the gift that it is, the present, that it is, not being so hung up on the past, or overly concerned about the future, but realizing right now where we are, we have this connection. I call it God. Some people call it energy, source, life, whatever it is. But for me, it's certainly God, and being connected to that. And I find when I'm struggling, I'm not remembering that. I'm forgetting that I have this connection, and so then I let other things kind of get in there. And so I'm not sure there's a huge difference here, between where men get their power and where women get their power. Although I think there is, you know, I think there's some difference in maybe how we approach it. And of course, there is certainly something to be said about the way that people handle power. And, you know, power can be abusive. Power can be destructive. And power can also be very life, you know, enhancing. And I know that what you wrote here in Powerful Woman, Where Do You Get Your Power? I know and recognize and see the, you know, the positivity that you put on that, and the message that you're communicating. And what if there was, like, give me the top 1, 2, 3 things that you would want people to take away from Powerful Woman.
That you're not alone, and that people are aware of the things that you have to go through, and also to keep pushing. Don't give up. Be encouraged.
Yeah, those are very good things. Annie, just in wrapping this up, you know, you and I met actually online.
Yes.
And you know, we were liking the things that we were saying to each other because of the positive nature of our comments. And that's, I always look for that. Anytime I see people just ranting and raving and on some kind of a terror and always wanting to tear everything down, I mean, those are real signs for me to, you know, just keep on driving.
Right.
But when I see somebody putting out positive things, I generally take a note of that. I took a note there. And then you posted the infamous, you shared something positive, and then you shared, "Can I get a woot woot?" And I mean, you might as well have put a hook in my jaw and just reeled me in, because I thought, now anybody who can put that out there, is this somebody I want to get to know? And so you and I began to communicate and get to know each other a little bit better. But I have lived off of that, Annie, so many times, and it just hit me, you know, in a right way. And I'm like, I'm stealing that. I'm going to use that, and I have, you know, on many occasions. And anytime I see you do that again, I'm thinking, you know, I just love that, and so I just love it. And so I want to tell you, I said it to you before, but thank you for that. That's just, I don't care if it wasn't for anybody else in the world, it worked for me, and it helped me, and I love that, and I live off of that. So thanks for being with us, Annie. I really enjoyed our time, and there'll be a nice article, of course, accompanying the show when it goes up, and they'll have all of your books and links in there. But for anybody that wants to get to you right away, the best place, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but author AnnieMJohnson.us, they can communicate with you there. That takes them to your website.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes. That or Facebook. Most of the social media. I think the only one I don't have is, what is it, chat?
Yeah. Well, they can reach you there and begin to communicate with you. You're on Facebook. We'll have the links there for you. But I want to thank you for being with us today, Annie. I enjoyed interviewing you. You know, I just love you to death. So it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks, everyone, for being with us today. And remember, whatever's going on in your life, just sprinkle a little love on it. I'm Rick Amitin, and I'll see you next time.